and I had the ultimate view. If you're on Facebook, well, here we go. A woman changed her child's diaper on camera.
I saw you go ahead.
I stopped the video. I know how to do that. I said, I'm sorry. I know how to change a diaper. I've
You are
changed.
screaming now, just so you know, but I saw you write that on Facebook.
I saw that too.
The purchase that wasn't the case.
Yeah, right there, right in front of the camera, she did it. Like, oh, really?
Well, you know, last month we had a bris on
Well, that's
Zoom.
intentional.
But
That's
you
a ritual.
The whole thing.
That's a ritual event. That's different.
It was
And that was-
really more than I
Going the diaper.
Close up and personal, right?
But they had the story where the Moel was on Zoom. He wasn't even in the room, and the father had to perform.
Oh,
Oh,
my.
They were
oh,
in, like, New Zealand, locked down. There was no Moel in the whole country, and the baby was already 5 months old. They didn't want to wait any longer.
oh, wow.
Well, that poor guy, the father was a skilled doctor.
I've heard of physicians.
I
I was just saying, is he a physician?
I would
Is he
be
a
a
physician?
doctor.
So it is noon,
Yeah.
so I'm going to start to mute everyone once I figure out how to do it. And hopefully my list is correct for today, that I have Marcia singing as Mr. Baruch for us today. That's correct? Okay, good. Good to see you in person. And I will get to the slide. We're going to continue studying Psalm 109 today, and here is Mr. Baruch. It's up on the screen, right? Marcia, you have it?
Yep.
Great. Thank you.
Misheberach avotenu mikor habracha limotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misheberach imotenu mikor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Thank you, Marcia. Yasha kochech to you, and may we all pray for healing of body and soul to all. Okay, I'm just looking on our list here. Good to see everyone today. We're going to continue studying Psalm 109, which we started today. And because we've pre-assigned some of the days of study, I have jumped around a little bit, because if it's a long psalm, I try to start it and end it myself and not have somebody else fill in for that. Last week it was very good. Debbie did do that, Lampert, because it was signed ahead of time. But sometimes we might jump around so that when I do pre-assign one, you don't have necessarily a psalm that's like 31 verses, like Psalm 109, 31 verses. I didn't quite divide it equally, because it ended well with verse 20 yesterday. So verse 21 to 31 is what we'll be studying today. This is a psalm where David's a little upset and angry. He's thinking about how his enemies have cursed him. It's different interpretations as whether or not what he's saying is the curses that were given to him, or that curses that he's actually saying to others. We like to think that he had the higher moral ground, so he's not actually cursing people. It's been said that this is, some of these curses are the worst that have ever been, most severe in the entire Bible, 2 of them that we read yesterday. But David does take the high moral ground. Although he's cursed, he merely asks that their curses be ignored and their designs against him be frustrated. He asks only that they be put to shame, clothed in disgrace. We'll see that in verse 29. He wants to see victory over such an enemy, and all the while retaining one's moral decency. He calls for a special public expression of thanks to God. In the verse 30, he says, in the midst of the throng, even when he's being insulted and he has these curses coming to him, he will still praise God. We'll begin with verse 21. I'll show you the slide in a minute. Okay, we begin. Now you, O God, my Lord, act on my behalf as befits your name. God, and good and faithful as you are, save me. So the word faithful here, you'll recognize from our Torah fun pin, chastecha. So chesed is often loving kindness, but it's also one who is faithful. So he's appealing to God's steadfast and steadmost love. And it details the psalmist's own misery. He's not in a good place. He does, though, request vengeance for his enemies. And we continue. For I am poor and needy, and my heart is pierced within me. Ani ve'evion, poor and needy. I fade away like a lengthening shadow. I'm shaken off like locusts. So I think of the lengthening shadow, when we say in Psalm 23, though I walk through the shadow of death, often shadows are referred to in connection with death. My knees give way from fasting. My flesh is lean, has lost its fat. So he's so upset that his knees are like shaking. He's not eating. He's losing weight. He's just not in a good place. I'm the object of their scorn. When they see me, they shake their head. Help me, O Lord, my God. Save me in accord with your loving kindness. We have again this word chastecha. That people may know that it is your hand, that you, O Lord, have done it. Let them curse, but you bless. Let them rise up, but come to grief while your servant rejoices. So the people need to know that this is coming from God. And it's interesting that even though he's in this down place and he feels like he's been cursed by his enemies, he still has this faith in God. And he's still, no matter how high a road and how moral he can be, he still has to have a little bit of anger towards those who are not nice to him. And he writes here in verse 29, my accusers shall be clothed in shame, wrapped in their disgrace as in a robe. So their disgrace will envelop their entire body. It'll be their clothes. My mouth shall sing much praise to the Lord. I'll acclaim God in the midst of a throng, because God stands at the right hand of the needy to save one from those who would condemn a person. So even though there are all these people against him and he feels so down and out, he's appealing to God. And in the end, his lament ends with the vow to still offer praise to God, which is so common in this type of Psalms, that no matter how he feels, it's still, in the end, we're still praising God. So the closing of Psalm 109 shows that these people, their clothing is actually their shame and their disgrace. So it envelops their entire body. God at a right hand is the right hand of a poor person. God is literally our right hand helping us when we're down and out. And it's striking contrast with the next Psalm that we read, Psalm 110, that he writes in that order. We probably won't study in that order, where God calls the people to sit at God's right hand. So not only is God at our right hand to help us, but also as a king would sit at God's right hand too. So it's almost the opposites, that when we're down and out, we sit at God's right hand, and when we're elevated to a king, we're sitting at God's right hand. So what is that lesson? That no matter what part of this pendulum we are on, this roller coaster of life, God's with us in the good and the bad. And I know it's not good that they always said that it's right-handed. I live with two lefties, and my mother-in-law is a lefty, and my grandmother-in-law was a lefty. So, and I see that Gay, and I have a feeling Debbie Lempert is probably a lefty too. So Joe was reading that also. I think it's a euphemism, especially if you think back to the fact that we all learn that God doesn't have body parts, but we learn here, of course, that God is anthropomorphic. So many different ways that God is with us in body parts, that God brought us out of Egypt, B'Yachad chazakah, with a strong, mighty hand and an outstretched arm. And we are sitting there on God's right hand, no matter if we're up or down. So can anyone resonate with this? Does this feel like something that sometimes if you feel like something bad is happening, or that you feel like people are just not being nice or out to get you, that you still feel like God's on your side? Paula's shaking her head yes. Did you want to explain more about that? And I see Paula because she's on my first screen, and she's actually center stage on my screen.
I just don't ever not think he's on my side. I do that. And I don't mean to make it sound like it's blind faith, but I guess sometimes it is, because it's I've said it before, it's the only way I get through the day. You know, people are going to be people.
Mhm.
Bad things are going to happen. You're going to be the butt of a joke or the victim of something. And it's just, I think you just have to say, that's just the way life goes. And you have to know that and expect it. You know, I don't think it's fair to just think that since you believe in your heart of hearts, you're a good person, that everything is going to be smooth sailing, because it's not. You know, it seems cliche to say, but every challenge is a learning experience, and that's what we take away from it. So.
Okay, thank you. And it's a nice way to live, to think that God is there with you. I think it's a very personal, individual experience for people. And any other thoughts that anyone wanted to add? I did more verses yesterday than today. There are only 11 verses, so we got through those. Oh, Joe, you're raising your hand, so if you want to unmute yourself. Great, thank you.
Okay, so there's, excuse me, there's two things. One, I kind of interpret that line about the shadow a little bit differently. When I was little and I felt alone, like, you know, like you walk away from something and you feel all alone. The shadow sort of encompassed me. That was like my hug. And even though it was usually my shadow, it was like the shadow was there, like God was making the shadow to give me a hug and hold me close to remind me that I wasn't alone. So like, even now, like when things aren't so good and I'm out alone, because now you kind of want to go out when nobody else is there. But you feel lonely because you're outside and nobody else is there. It's kind of my reminder that I'm not alone, because there is someone else there. It's still kind of like gives me that hug that I'm not alone, and gives me that silver lining that, you know, there's still something protecting me and there's a good reason that I'm alone. So it's like helping me find that silver lining.
I like that.
So even though there's like, you know, I don't know, 50,000 people in my development or however many it is, there's a reason that it's just me, and it gives me that hug that, you know, there's somebody else out there.
I think that's so important to say, especially now that, you know, we were talking at the very beginning how the world keeps changing each day from COVID, that sheltering in place, a lot of people haven't seen others, and we can't get that physical hug. So to think that when we get the natural shadow, that could be a hug. It's a beautiful, I hope, Joe, you saw in the chat, Gilda wrote that she loves a shadow hug idea. I actually put it in my notes too. And it's special. And I think it's important, Audrey, I'll call on you in 1 minute, that when we read the Psalms, that it's good that we can relate it to our own personal life. That's one of my goals when I teach Torah, always, no matter what kind of Torah I teach, that you can see it in your own personal life and how it can be relevant to you today. So I think the concept of hugging today is important because it's something that's often lacking because of the situation. Audrey.
I sometimes feel, particularly in this psalm, that David is trying to convince himself, forget the other people, but he's not quite sure himself if God is really there, because he keeps saying, I believe it, but I don't think he does. I think he keeps trying to convince himself first.
Right. I think you are onto something there. I may have said it yesterday that I feel like this psalm especially, he was doing some self-psychology with himself. He was almost analyzing himself and his writing about what his feelings were. Maybe he couldn't express it to somebody else, but this was how he was expressing it. And sometimes we do need to write it or express it to convince ourselves of something. Thank you, Audrey. Debbie Lempart wrote, I think about poor King David, what his anxiety level must have been, and would his Psalms have been like if he had better living through pharmacology. I have to agree. The psychobabble and the pharmaceuticals do come hand in hand at times. And Devora, I hope I can read this out loud to everybody. Devora, is that okay that I share with everyone what you wrote? Just unmute yourself and say yes, and then I think Faye had her hand up.
Yes, if it's okay with you.
Okay, sure. So Devora wrote, Devora Rottenberg, how can we expect that God can help every person that calls out to him? I believe God just gives us free choice and stays in the background. After the book of Joshua, God kind of takes a back seat and we don't hear the same kind of miracles. I have an issue with this because if God walks beside us, why doesn't he walk with starving African children who pray to him constantly? Very true. So everyone really, I find it very personal. So people can say that God's walking beside us and God has this metaphorical hand in everything, or that we can see God's hand in it, or we could not see God's hand in it. Sometimes people put God into things that perhaps, in my personal opinion, shouldn't be. Things happen. We shouldn't say that God's creating all these things to happen and God causes it all to happen. And I'm going to read what Adele wrote in a minute, because it's a good practice for all of us to do. But we can't really blame God for everything. The free choice is a really important thing. I know that there was a discussion. Some people are saying what happens in the world is because God's trying to punish us. It's such a terrible thing to say because there's so many good people, we all know that suffer, that we shouldn't. But I think it is an interesting practice, what David did to write his thoughts out in the Psalms, and what Adele told us she did, that she, in the chat, she wrote that she wrote a Thanksgiving prayer or Thanksgiving, how did you word it? I want to see your exact words. Thanksgiving letter to God. It was very helpful. I think that we should all do that. This is a really great thing to do. Okay, so if you think Thanksgiving letters are really a positive thing, for sure. But think about the ritual that we're going to be doing in a few weeks, and I hope that people still get to do it. You could social distance and do this. Tashlich. I've always loved tashlich, where you throw bread into the water to throw away your sins. If you live near water, that's very helpful. You could do it. And by the way, they say you should do it the first day of Rosh Hashanah, but if it's Shabbat, you don't do it then. You can't carry the bread to the water. So you do it the second day, but you can actually do it until Hoshana Rabbah. You can pray for forgiveness until Hoshana Rabbah. So you got a long time to be able to do it. And another practice for that, I've done it in different ways. People can write out a note of what they want to ask for forgiveness and then rip it up. You have a fireplace, not that I want anyone to create fires, but you can have a fireplace. Or once, okay, don't kill me, it might not be environmentally safe, but I once had children take balloons and attach their prayer of what they wanted to do for forgiveness and then put it into the air. I know it might not be good for the environment. And another one for their blessings and what they were grateful for, and have that go up in the air too as a practice. But you could do it yourself, or we have to create rituals to do, and that's why we have tashlich. Who was raising their hand? Was it Audrey? Did you want to say something? No? Okay. Oh, that's cool. I didn't even know that exists. So Devora said that they're giving out packets of melting paper so that people can do tashlich at home and put it in the water. And one other person wrote that Edith wrote, he doesn't seem to be forgiving his enemies. That's what we seem to be taught. Yeah, so David's a little caught up in all of it, but I think mentally, if he really wants to be in a better place, if he let it go a little bit, that's a good thing. And this is where I'll end with before we go. That's what tashlich's all about. It's letting go of the past sins, and literally you're letting it go by throwing it into the water, the piece of bread, or the bad environmental idea of letting go with the prayers attached to the balloon, that you literally let it go, and then you can start the new year on a fresh slate. I'll read one more thing. In camp, we had wishing boats, ice cream stick rafts with a tea candle. That's how you let it go. But that's another idea. And think about it, that we're all going to be having new adventures this Rosh Hashanah. That's one of the things I was asking at the beginning, what some of the people are doing for services and how to create sacred spaces within our own homes. Some people might be experts at doing the Zoom on Shabbat and holidays. This might be your first experience. Some people might be comfortable. Some people might not be comfortable. How do we create those sacred spaces? So next Tuesday, after our Psalms, I'm going to try to do a briefer Psalm, or at least my briefer teaching. And then Debbie Lempart and Toby Holtzman, who are co-chairs of our virtual Tefillot, are going to be having a discussion about that, how we create our sacred spaces as we move into Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And think about, I know Debbie has said, or I don't know if it's Debbie or Julia has said to me, fasting all day in your house. It's one thing to fast when you're in the shul and you don't have food available, but you might have the food available while you're trying to fast all day. So something to whet your appetite for next Tuesday. So Toby, if you would read our names of those who we remember today.
Okay. We remember with love Evelyn Seelig, Sue Press, Leona Elligberg, Dolores Megan, Phyllis Haas, David Copland, Louis Hoser, Ivan Stanton, Julie Wynn, Louis Berlin, Hilda Stern, Sylvia Kraus, Hope Dellen, Jack Honowitz, Cy Kane, Minna Asserson, Richard Marheet, Lillian Rappaport, Eden Rich, Eden Ronan Greenstein, Susan Berman Levine, Avraham Ben Hirsch Lieb, Lillian Tobias, Alicia Niamzura, Helen Goldberg, Dr. Jael Marlin, Linda Hornick, Rabbi Sigma Faye Corin, Donna Spector, Samuel Ben Chaim, Andrew Cortez, Rabbi Ken Roseman, Hannah Rich, Stephen Lazarus, Moishe Miller, Stephen Carlin, Richard Marek, Doris Kaufman-Shaman, Benjamin Zimmerman, Moshe Eliezer, Thornton Soup Saferstein, Dr. Merrill Goldman, Herb Lubars, Julie Horwich, Allison Stopel Weaver, Harold I. Abramson, Judy Berger, Madeline Saul, Rabbi Micah Kaplan, Nisan Yisrael Ben Yaakov Aryeh, Sarah Bat Avraham, Raymond Raskin, Staff Sergeant Adil Fischler, Raymond Sassoon, Nachman Ben Leah, Devorah Bat Albert Miller, Ruth Wolf, Joan Sitver, Chana Bat Shimon Vakarline, Helen Rose, Leah Barker, David Adler, Robert Thrope, Lucy Martin, Robbie Cohen, Margot Grossbein, Florence Latstein, Pinchas Mendel Ben Yaakov Verachel, Rosamund Adler, Joan Steiner, Michael Silverman, Miriam Lehman, Larry Gomolka, Ellen Babbitt, Dr. Stephen C. Scheiber, Michael Barr, Adrian Villa, Waylon Beth Wingen, Lucille Vey, Rabbi Adine Steinsaltz, Gary Kaplan, Theodore Fishman, Michael Fournier, Carol Hope Taub, Jordan Davis, Randall Craig Fleischer, Tim Wilson, Michael Ward, Selma Maisie, Mel Crouppen, David Levy.
May their memories be a blessing. If we have other names, if you are observing a yurt site today or a recent passing, if you can unmute yourself at this time to add your loved one's name. And as you unmute yourself, those who will be saying Kaddish today, if you can unmute yourself as well, as we'll rise to recite the mourner's Kaddish, I'll lead us in the pace that we'll be reciting it. We begin. Yitzgadal, Yitzkadas, Shemei, Rabbah,
Amen.
Yalma, Yisrael, Kirutei, V'yamlich, Malchutei, V'chayechon, Uv'yom echon, Uv'chaye, Zechol, Yisrael, Ba'agala, Bizman, Hariv, Ni'imru, Amen. Yehei, Shemei, Rabba, Ara, Leolam, Maya, Yitzhak, 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 Yitzhalam,
Say, Hadar, Halal, Emei, Kudusha, Rehu, La'ela, Ol, Birakata, Shirata, Mishpakata, Benekamata, Imran, Mal, Imru, Omen, Hey, Shalama, Rabba, Shemaya, Daim, Elenu, Yaakov, Yisrael, Imaru, Amen. Say, Shalom, Mad, Uyase, Shalom, Lenu, Yaakov, Yisrael, Imaru, Amen. Yashikoa.
I'm just going to briefly, just give me 1 minute to mute everybody so we have the opportunity to be able to hear Debbie Lampart, who will be sounding the shofar today. It's a custom to sound it in the month of Elul to wake ourselves up to be ready for the spiritual practice of the self-reflection during Elul before Rosh Hashanah. Debbie.
I'm not going to stand because if I stand, then you can't see me. Sorry, got to get it right.
Yasher kocher.
Thank you.
Yasher koach to you. It was